All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us during the Lytham Partners Fall 2022 Investor Conference. My name is Robert Blum, Managing Partner of Lytham Partners, and during this fireside chat, we welcome MannKind, ticker symbol of MNKD on the NASDAQ, and their CEO, Michael Castagna. We'll dive into questions in just a moment, but just want to remind everyone that Michael and management are available for one-on-one meetings throughout the conference here. If you've not already signed up and would like to do so, you can send me an email at Blum, B-L-U-M, at lythampartners.com, or you can visit the website at lythampartners.com/virtual. Click on the one-on-one meeting request button, and we'll look to get you taken care of. So with that said, let's get started here, Mike. Maybe just a quick brief overview of the company for those that may not be familiar, and maybe your background here as well.
Sure, Robert, and thank you so much for having us today. I'm looking forward to your conference as always. MannKind, for those of you who don't know us, we've been around 31 years this year. It started off as a diabetes inhalation focused company. And over the last 5 years, we've diversified away from just pure diabetes play, which is what we've been known for historically, into a real platform company. When you think about inhalation therapeutics, especially with COVID, we've really refocused and pivoted the company to orphan lung about 3 years ago. And now those assets are starting to come through on the pipeline, as well as our most recent FDA-approved product for Tyvaso DPI. And so we're super excited about the future of the company, where we are, and we're about to grow over the next decade, and what's happened over the last 5-year transition. My background has been, I'm a pharmacist by training. I have been in the industry 25 years. I've worked in biologics. I've worked in combination pills and inhalers. I've done turnarounds. And so I joined MannKind about 6 years ago and became CEO about 5 years ago. And we've done a very nice job at turning around the company and pivoting us for the future, and really enjoy what we're doing. It's a really exciting time and a hard time to be investing in healthcare. It's a lot of depressed valuations, but I think as we continue to go forward, we have a nice growth story for investors as we look out.
Perfect. So again, you've been a part of a few other events. So for those that maybe have an opportunity to go back and listen to some of the archives, because I want to dive into some more specifics during this event here. And with that, let's start with Afrezza here. How is the current U.S. strategy for inhaled insulin Afrezza evolving over the next 6 months, and maybe what is the status of the pediatric trial and the ABC trial study?
Yeah, I think on Afrezza, we tried a lot over the last 12 to 18 months. Coming out of COVID, that really slowed us down the last 2 years. And if you just look at Afrezza, the good news is we've done okay, in terms of keeping the drug on the market and growing sales, where two large pharma couldn't do that. It's not where we want it to be. We're still trying to break 1,000 scripts a week, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And so as we've taken a step back as we get ready for Q4 and closing out the year and getting ready for 23, we were trying to really break that trend and see if we can make a hockey stick happen and grow this faster. The reality is, we'd have to be willing to spend a lot more money than we are willing to spend. We have a great pipeline in front of us, and we're really deploying our capital for the future growth. And so what we did recently is we purchased a product called Vigo. We'll talk about, I'm sure, shortly. But what that's done is now pivoted our endocrine business unit now, where it has 2 products, and that we can really run this business to cash flow break even over the next 12 to 18 months. So that's our main goal for Afrezza, is to make sure we get it in a good spot. We continue to grow the asset because we had to have these data sets reading out, as you just asked about. And now we got Vigo on top of that, which we'll talk about as well. So we have a nice business unit that should continue to grow double digits for the foreseeable future. In terms of the data sets you talked about, I think that's exactly what we're waiting for to kind of give us the right insights for the next steps. When you look back on Afrezza's development, it was fundamentally underdosed in the clinical trials. And that is what hurt the product's launch and subsequent uptake over the last 5 years. And so it took us a little while to get the packaging right and to get the dosing right. And now we have run all the new trials coming out will be with our new dosing recommendation. So if you look at the ABC study, it's the nearest study reading out hopefully in the next month or so. And that's a pump that's called a Afrezza basal combination study. So what we did is we took 5 people, kept them on their smart pumps. We switched 10 people to Afrezza off of their smart pump plus Tresiba in type 1s. And then we actually shut off the bolus feature of the pump where we could, but really added Afrezza on top of a pump. And so our hypothesis is whether you add Afrezza or switch to Afrezza, you're going to get better outcomes than if you just stay on a pump by itself. That's a pretty bold bet for type 1 diabetes because doctors perceive the pump to be the best standard of care. Now, this is a small pilot trial, but I think as we look at kids as the next readout on the company, doctors will naturally say, I use insulin pumps, and I think that's the best. So being able to show some data that you can safely switch off a smart AID pump from Tandem or Medtronic over to a Afrezza Tresiba and get the same outcome, I think is going to be a little bit of a disruptive mindset for doctors who've been telling patients, you should spend all this money up front, you should pay for the pump. It's the best we have. And now we're going to come out hopefully with a data set showing you, well, you can actually do equally as good, if not better. We'll find out. I don't have the data yet. And maybe a Afrezza plus a pump is better. I don't have that insight yet. But is the question, is it that much better? Is it that worth that much more cost and complexity? Or is it just incrementally better? And I think that's the readout we're waiting for. And then that'll determine, what the doctor reactions are. We already have AdWords set up and getting some feedback on that. And that'll be the first step as we close out 22 and going into 23 planning. The next study readout is going to come out of India. And in our original type 2 trial, type 2s, we know need 16 to 20 units of inhaled insulin to really get about a 1.6 A1C reduction. In our pivotal trial, we underdosed those patients to about 12 units. And so they only got about a 0.8 A1C reduction. So we're hoping in India, where we actually ran good dose titration in over 100 patients, and it's a placebo-controlled trial, we should be able to see hopefully a 1 to 1.6 A1C reduction. That'll be a large, robust trial, and now we'll have multiple trials showing that new data works in type 2s as well. And then the third data set you were asking about is pediatric. And so when you take a step back and say, how do you change the standard of care with diabetes? Our founder, Al Mann, obviously perfected the insulin pump and sold that to Medtronic. And that's really where kids have adopted insulin pumps that turn into adults, and adult endocrinologists had to learn. I think you saw the same thing happen with Dexcom. Parents worried about their kids, or their glucose control, their alarms are going low from their insulin. Now that's how you see Dexcom now take off in the adult segment. So we believe that the key to inhaled insulin over the next 5 and 10 years to really get into the mainstream is going to start with the kids. And so we need that data set to read out. That trial is almost at 100 patients this week. We should have another 5 or 10 sites coming on board in the next few months here. And so getting that trial done and enrolled and outcome it's built to be non-inferior with superiority as a secondary endpoint. And so that'll be the first robust large phase 3 trial we've run as MannKind in over a decade. It's in all the top academic centers in the US. And so we're super excited for that trial to get done and get enrolled and get ultimately readout, because we think that's going to pivot the future for Afrezza. So a lot of things coming, but they're all reading out over the next 1 month to 18 months roughly. And I think that's going to drive really the next decade for Afrezza when you think about what we've done to set it up for continued growth.
Sounds good. You mentioned Vigo just a moment ago. Talk a little bit about how the integration is going and what the impact is both to Vigo and to Afrezza prescription growth here.
Yeah, I mean, Vigo, it's always amazing to me when I talk to doctors. You ask them about Afrezza and they give you every objection why they can't try something new. You ask them about Vigo and they smile and light up and say, I love that device. I used it. It hasn't been marketed in a while. I'm so glad you guys bought it. When am I going to get a rep with it? So we're actually here in Q4 about to launch 2 districts with Vigo in the bag. And so we stabilized the sales in Q3. We hired 15 dedicated reps. These are some of the best Vigo reps we could find. And we're really excited about them taking on the biggest volume accounts. And they've been able to stabilize that here in Q3. But as we go to Q4, we want to start to ramp that growth up. So we had given guidance of $18 to $22 million in the first 12 months. I think we're on track to hit to the higher end of that trend. If you really look, we have stabilized already in Q3. So that trend should continue to grow as we go out forward. And we should hit the higher end of that forecast as we go into 2023. And for those who have not seen Vigo, you can see it here. It's a nice little patch pump device. Sorry, this little background doesn't help me. But you can see it fits in the palm of your hand, and that is, just goes on your body. It delivers your mealtime insulin and your basal insulin. So you just click, 2 clicks, 4 clicks, whatever you want for that meal. It's a very simple device. And so what this acquisition did, it wasn't a very expensive acquisition, fortunately, but it really pivoted us when we call on 5,000 targets. If you're not writing Afrezza, you got to make a change. Try Vigo, right? So we really have 2 products now to sell in that bag that we only had 1. And we know whenever we had Afrezza, there was a large resistance to trying it. Now we have 2 reasons to show up, and I think it's going to really help our sales force be that much more effective and efficient in 2023. So we're super excited about Vigo. It's got a lot of good data behind it. There was a 4-year data set that just came out of ADA by one of the docs that happened to meet when I was there. He had no idea we bought it. And so I think Vigo will continue to do well. It's now fully integrated into the company, and now we're just working towards a January, February Q1, I'll say, integration into our other 60 reps outside of the 15.
Okay. You touched a little bit on the India trial, but when you sort of look at the status of the Brazil launch, the India trial, other international expansion opportunities for Afrezza, maybe just expand a little bit there if you can.
Yeah, I think in general, years ago when we went after India and Brazil, we had a large insulin purchase commitment. Excuse me. We had a large insulin purchase commitment, and so we thought the best way to use up that commitment was through the international markets and getting faster adoption because India has 81 million people with type 2 and type 1 diabetes. Brazil has another 40-50 million. So just those two markets are roughly a third of the world population of diabetes. And so that was our main focus. Since then, we've been able to restructure that agreement. It's not as much of a burden on the company, but we already moved forward with approval for Brazil and pending approval next year, hopefully for India. And so we want to get the drug launched in those two markets. We think part of the challenge was the cost and then the economy and the exchange rates since we signed those deals. And so that's a lot of the work we've been doing this year is how do we bring the cost down in order to enter those markets in Brazil specifically again, and then India, how do we set up for success the first time? And so that trial, honestly, it was taking a while to get the trial done because of COVID, but they're doing that type 2 trial. That's really coming fast and furious. And so this is coming nicely as we get to 2023. We'll launch in 23 or early 24, but it's TBD, but the trial is finishing up and that should allow us to get ready for India. And we'll get back into Brazil. We're working on some of the expiration dating and some of the regulations, things that from when it got approved, we had to use the newest insulin, which wasn't always the most cost-effective thing for shareholders. So we kind of paused, wanted to fix some of that, and hopefully get back there with leveraging some of the insulin supply we have and making the cost more efficient for the people in Brazil.
Okay, let's transition here. Talk a little bit about how United Therapeutics' launch of Tyvaso DPI is going, and maybe specifically the conversion from Tyvaso to Tyvaso DPI.
Yeah, this is probably a multi-billion-dollar question for a lot of our shareholders, and people are going to listen to every last word I say on this one. But because we are so close to the end of the quarter, I can't say much. Meaning, we've launched it. We've launched all the SKUs so far. We got probably the hospital titration packs, and one of them more we're just getting through the manufacturing packaging stage. But otherwise, it's on track to do what we said. We feel very good about the trends. We're happy with the outcome of UT and some of the lawsuits that were happening. So it does look like, we got a good window here to really launch and help patients quickly. And for me, we can't describe how much conversion is going or not going, but I would say there's a lot of positive social media comments. If you go in those sort of Facebook chat rooms or groups, you see patients saying, hey, this thing's amazing. You need to go talk to your doctor about it. It really helped me. Or a mom saying, hey, I just took my daughter to the movies for the first time. Think about that. You've never been able to take your child to a movie. So that quality of life aspect, which we saw an improvement in our pivotal trial, UT's pivotal trial at the end of the day, which was improvement in 6-minute walk test and improvement in quality of life. Those things are really meaningful to these patients because they have limited lifespan left. And, if they can spend a couple extra quality months and years with their kids or their family or their loved one, get out, take a vacation, that's something they've not been able to do historically because they need this nebulizer. They're hooked to it all day long and they can't go very far. Where now they have a 2-second inhalation, they're out and they're done. Right. So it's that easy. And it's a very game-changing opportunity for these patients. So we're very excited. I think the launch is going to go very well. And let's stay tuned for our quarterly earnings here in November.
Okay. Anything next? What's next for the partnership with United? Are there opportunities that you see as having, sort of the greatest upside potential?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. The first is within Tyvaso DPI. Unfortunately, there's 2 trials we're waiting on. One was called Teton. One is called Perfect. The Perfect study just unfortunately ended, which is fine. We knew that was a high risk study. That's research. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That one was higher risk. The next one that they're working on that they're waiting for the readout on is Teton, and that's for IPF. And I think there's a good scientific rationale on a subset of patients they've already run studies in where they saw a benefit. So I think Teton, hopefully will continue to enroll and wrap up and show positive outcomes. That is the bigger population of IPF. So when you think about what's next, the IPF drugs today, nintedanib and pirfenidone, do about $3-4 billion globally. If you can now add a second drug onto those patients who really don't have any options, this is a huge blockbuster for them if this works. And so I think that's the big leg up. UT last year got ILD approved, so now they have PAH, then they got PH-ILD. That alone, those two indications are projected to do 1.5, $1.6 billion in the next 3 years. And so hopefully the majority of that becomes MannKind. And then you got the Teton reading out on top of that. And that's the short-term stuff for MannKind and United. And then we had signed a collaboration agreement. And I think, as we've talked about different opportunities and different options, you've seen us, we've looked at a PD5, we've looked at imatinib. We could bring those things forward, but when you look at how much we think they would generate versus making sure Tyvaso's a blockbuster, $100 million a year, $200 million a year, you got to really go for conviction that you can make something that's going to do 300 to 500 million difference. And I think that's what UT and us are focused on, is what is that next molecule that can really make a difference for patients and scientifically drive a different outcome. So hopefully there'll be more partnerships with United. It's been a great partner. It's a great company. We love working with them. And I think it's just a matter of how many patients can we help with PAH, ILD, or IPF. So we'll continue to help.
Maybe talk a little bit about the expectations of the phase 1 results for the MNKD, the 101 study, related to the clofazimine.
Yeah, I think back to our earlier comment, in 2019, we pivoted the company to orphan lung. And one of the first decisions we made after that was to purchase clofazimine through a company called Quorum. And that's really done nicely all through the tox data. We just wrapped up phase 1, as you saw, about 2 weeks ago. And that data confirmed a couple things. It confirmed what we thought was the right therapeutic dose. So we think this can be dosed 4 times a year, meaning 28 days in a row, and then you stop for 2 months, and then dose for 28 days and stop for 2 months, which is really important in this population because they have such hard pill burdens and tolerability issues with the current drugs. There's only one true drug approved. All the rest are off label. And so, being able to show that we can reduce administration burden, I think it will be a huge opportunity for these patients. And then, we think a different mechanism of action, will really help treat NTM a lot broader. This is a very rare disease, about 100,000 patients in the US, very prevalent in Asia Pacific region as well. So when you look at the marketplace, we think there is an Asia Pacific partner. One day we can lock down, obviously, the US, and then maybe there's some other in Brazil or somewhere else. But the 2 markets mainly today are Japan, Asia Pacific overall, and US, and that's where we're focused on the trial. And so the next phase of this one is, we know it's safe, we know it's tolerable. We saw, one of our worries was QT prolongation. Another worry was would it stain the oral cavity because it is a red dye, and we didn't see any issues on either one of those topics. So it really confirmed in our mind the risks that we saw in the program appear to now be de-risked. And so now it's an execution play, which is we know the drug works against the NTM bug, and we know that we get well above MIC levels with the current dosing regimen we're going after. So this one's just a matter of time to get through the system, aligned with the FDA on the protocol. That's probably the next big work that we have to do. And I can say the FDA is very collaborative in this particular disease. And so hopefully getting them to align on our protocol, study design, the endpoints of the study, and we'll start the chronic tox here very shortly. But that trial's kicking off and scheduled to kick off early next year.
Okay. Sort of next up here, talk about maybe the status of the idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis programs, MNKD 201 and 501, maybe an update there.
Yeah. 201 is the brand is called OFEV. It's nintedanib for Boehringer Ingelheim. It does, I think, almost $3 billion a year. And the challenge with these drugs is they're not very tolerable. And in the case of OFEV, it doesn't have high bioavailability. So you got to take a lot of drug to get a very small window of effect. We believe delivering it directly to the lung, we bypass all the GI side effects and a lot of the issues that patients have with OFEV today, and that we can get to a very small dose delivered directly to the lung and really treat the site of fibrosis that's a concern. And so that's 201, and we have finished up the bleomycin studies. We finished up some of the early phase studies, the formulation work. So this one looks like it's going to be ready to get into phase 1 next year, and should go quickly to phase 2, 3. So we think this one will start to move very quickly from this point forward, because a lot of it was confirming the dose, confirming we delivered what we thought, and showing that there's no safety signal. And so far from everything we know, this program should go very quickly from here on out. So that's 201. The second product we have in IPF that we own is 501. And we don't own it fully yet, but we agreed to license in to do some of the early work. And if we want to fully license it in, that's another negotiation for another day. But at this point, we'll have run some animal models on ALK5 inhibition with TGF beta. we know that this mechanism works on fibrosis and reducing fibrosis. And so it's a real question of tolerability, toxicity in this narrow therapeutic window. If you give too much, you cause damage. You don't give enough, it doesn't work. We think this molecule really goes right in the middle of that in terms of, short half-life, small enough dosing, very targeted to the lung. And our partner is doing it for dermatology and keloid scarring and scleroderma they're looking at. And so far that data is all panning out from a tox perspective, tolerability. We're not seeing anything. And so hopefully with our dosing that we're looking at for the lung, if this can make it through a tox phase, it looks like it could be a really good drug. But it's an NCE, so it's high risk, high reward, but it's a multi-billion-dollar category if it works. So we're excited about that.
Right. All right. Well, I think we're sort of at the end here. Anything else that maybe we didn't hit on that you think would be appropriate for the discussion here?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, investors these days healthcare is a tough space. There's a lot of companies undervalued. We think MannKind's undervalued at these prices, and we have a nice growth curve in front of us. When you look at the company, historically it was undercapitalized. We fixed a lot of that last year. We have enough cash to fund our plans to cash flow break even. We don't see a need to raise any dramatic money anywhere time soon. So we have no major debts due in the next 12 months. So we're in a really good spot to continue to invest, to grow. My job is proper capital allocation, and we're going to run the company to get through this next phase of turmoil that's going to come with the economy. But we think our company will shine as we continue to look at growth between Afrezza, Vigo, Tyvaso, the pipeline, Tyvaso manufacturing, and then, Afrezza pediatrics. I mean, there's nothing but continued momentum for this company over the next 2 to 5 years. So we're super excited about everything we're doing, and hopefully we'll help a lot of patients and shareholders.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate it as always, Mike. Thank you for the time today. Greatly appreciated. Again, I'll remind anyone that would like to arrange a one-on-one meeting with management here. Reach out to me if you haven't done so already. Blum, BLUM at lythampartners.com, or again, click on the one-on-one meeting request button on our website, lythampartners.com/virtual. We'll get you taken care of. Mike, thank you so much as always. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert. Have a great day.